8-9 simple radical equations practice solutions. So if we look at our first example here, we have 4 is equal to the square root of 8a plus 3. So our first thing to do is to isolate that radical. We're going to subtract 3 from each side here to get 1 is equal to the square root of 8a. Then we are going to square both sides to get rid of that radical. So 1 squared is 1 is equal to the square root of 8a squared is just 8a. And then we divide each side by the 8 to get a by itself, and a is equal to 1/8. For 20, we have 3 is equal to the square root of 4x plus 1. Our radical is isolated here, so we're going to start by squaring each side. So we're going to get 9 is equal to 4x plus 1, and we're just going to solve for x. We're going to subtract the 1 from each side to get 8 is equal to 4x, and then we divide each side by the 4 to get that x is 2. For 21, again, we're going to isolate that radical, so we are going to subtract the 3 from each side. We have the square root of 5y minus 2 is equal to 6. Then we take each side and we square it. So it's going to become 5y minus 2 is equal to 36. We add the 2 to both sides to get 5y is equal to 38. And then we divide each side by 5 to get that y is equal to 38 over 5. For 22, we have the square root of 5m minus 5 plus 6 is equal to 7. So we're going to subtract the 6 from each side. We have the square root of 5m minus 5 is equal to 7 minus 6 is 1. Then we square both sides to give us 5m minus 5 is equal to 1. We add that 5 to each side to get 5m is equal to 6. And then we divide each side by 5. So m is equal to 6 over 5. For 23, we have the square root of x is equal to 3 square root 7. We can't isolate the radical here, so we're just going to square both sides. So this is going to be x is equal to 3 squared times the square root of 7 squared. 3 squared is 9. And the square root of 7 squared is 7. So that's going to be x is equal to 9 times 7, which is 63. For 24, same thing. The square root of r is equal to 5 square root 2. So we are going to square both sides. The square root of r squared is r. The 5 is going to get squared, as well as the square root of 2 gets squared. 5 squared is 25. The square root of 2 squared is 2. So r is equal to 25 times 2, which is 50. For 25, we have 8 is equal to 5a over 4 underneath the square root minus 2. So we're going to start by adding the 2 to both sides. We get 10 is equal to the square root of 5a over 4. And then we're going to square both sides. So 10 squared is 100. The square root of 5a over 4 squared is 5a over 4. And then we get the a by itself. So we're going to multiply each side by the 4. 4 times 100 is 400 is equal to 5a. We divide each side by 5. And get that a is equal to 80. For 26, we have 4 is equal to the square root of 7x over 3 plus 2. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. We have 12 is equal to the square root of 7x over 3. We are going to square both sides now that our radical is isolated. This 12 squared is 144. And the square root of 7x over 3 squared is 7x over 3. So we're going to multiply each side by 3 to get rid of the 7x over 3, and it's just going to be 7x on that side. The 3 times 4 is 12, carry the 1. 3 times 4 plus 1 is 13, and 3 times 1 plus 1 is 4. So we have 432 is equal to 7x. We divide each side by the 7 to get x is equal to 7 goes into 43 6 times with 1 left over. 7 goes into 12 once. 12 minus 7 gives us 5, so that's 71 and 5/7. 61 and 5/7. For 27, we have the square root of 2x plus 9 over 5 is equal to 3. Our radical is isolated, so square each side. So this is going to give us 2x plus 9 over 5 is equal to 9. We want to multiply each side by 5 to get rid of that fraction. To get 2x plus 9 is equal to 45. We subtract each side with the 9 to get 2x is equal to 36. And then we divide each side by 2 to get that x is equal to 18. For 28, we have the square root of 2n minus 4 over 8 is equal to 2. So again, we're going to square both sides since our radical is isolated. To get 2n minus 4 over 8 is equal to 4. We then multiply each side by 8 to get 2n minus 4 is equal to 32. We add the 4 to both sides to get 2n is equal to 36. And then divide by 2 to get n is equal to 18. For 29, we have 4 is equal to the square root of 7k minus 10 over 9. So again, isolate the radical, which it's done, square both sides. So 16 is equal to 7k minus 10 over 9. We multiply each side by 9. The 9's cancel out. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 1 plus 5 is 14. So 144 is equal to 7k minus 10. We're going to add that 10 to both sides to get 154 is equal to 7k. Then we divide each side by 7. K is equal to 7 goes into 15 twice with 1 left over. 7 goes into 14 twice. So k is equal to 22. For 30, we have 3 is equal to the square root of 4x minus 5. Radicals isolated, square both sides. So 9 is equal to 4x minus 5 over 7. Multiply each side by the 7 to get 63 is equal to 4x minus 5. Add the 5 to both sides. We have 68 is equal to 4x. Then we're going to divide by 4. We have x is equal to 4 goes into 6 once with 2 left over. 4 goes into 28 7 times. So x is equal to 17. 31 is similar to one of those questions that we just did recently. So we have 5 square root 2 is equal to 5 square root t. There's no way of isolating the radical, but we can divide each side by 5 to give us 3 square root 2 is equal to the square root of t. From here, we can square both sides. So this is going to be 9 times 2 is equal to t. 9 times 2 is 18, so t is equal to 18. For 32, we have 5 square root 10 is equal to 6 square root m. If you divided each side by the 5 or by the 6, we wouldn't be getting a whole number, so we can actually just square both sides and get the same thing. So this is going to be 25 times 10 is equal to 36 times m. We are going to have 250 is equal to 36m. We divide each side by 36. And then if we want, you can simplify this. We can divide by 2. 2 goes into 250 125 times over 18. From here, You don't have anything that goes into both of these, so this 125 over 18 would be your answer. For 33, with the square root of 2a squared minus 5 is equal to 11, radicals isolated, square both sides. So 2a squared minus 5 is equal to 121. We're going to get the a squared by itself. We're going to add 5 to both sides. To get 2a squared is equal to 126. We divide each side by 2. So a squared is equal to 63. Then we take the square root of both sides. The 63 is 3 and 21. 21 is 3 and 7. So now that we're taking the square root of both sides, that plus or minus has to go in front of our answer. And we're going to have a is equal to plus or minus 3 square root 7. For 34, we have the square root of 2m squared minus 10 is equal to 4. So again, our radical is isolated already, so square both sides. So 2m squared minus 10 is equal to 16. We want to move that 10 over by adding it to both sides. So we're going to get 2m squared is equal to 26. We're going to divide each side by 2 to get m squared is equal to 13. And then we're going to take the square root of both sides to get m is equal to plus or minus the square root of 13. For 35, we have 10 is equal to 2 square root 3c squared minus 2. So we're going to first start by dividing each side by the 2, so that way we can isolate that radical. This is going to give us 5 is equal to the square root of 3c squared minus 2. Now, since our radical is isolated, we are going to square both sides. The 5 squared gives us 25, and the square root of 3c squared minus 2 squared is just 3c squared minus 2. From here, we're going to get that c squared by itself, so we're going to add 2 to both sides. So we are left with 27 is equal to 3c squared. We divide each side by 3 and get 9 is equal to c squared. We take the square root of both sides and get that 3 is equal to c, and that 3 is a plus or minus. So you can either write it like this, or you can write it c is equal to plus or minus 3. For 36, we have 36 is equal to 4 times the square root of 4m squared plus 5. So again, we're going to isolate that variable, or that radical, by dividing each side by 4. So this is leaving us with 9 is equal to the square root of 4m squared plus 5. We then square both sides since our radical is isolated to give ourselves 81 is equal to 4m squared plus 5. Get the m squared by itself now. Subtract the 5 from both sides. So 76 is equal to 4m squared. Divide each side by 4. So 4 goes into 7 one time with 3 left over, and 4 goes into 36 19 times. So 19 is equal to m squared. We take the square root of both sides, and m is equal to plus or minus 19. For 37, we have 5b squared minus 36 underneath our radical is equal to 2b. Our radical is isolated, so we are going to square both sides of this to give ourselves 3b squared minus 36 is equal to 4b squared. So I'm going to move that 5b squared over by subtracting it from each side. So give us 36. Negative 36 is equal to negative b squared. I'm going to divide each side by negative 1 to give us 36 is equal to b squared. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides to give me b is equal to plus or minus 6. For 38, we have the square root of 19x squared minus 51 is equal to 4x. So we are going to square both sides since that radical is isolated to give ourselves 19x squared minus 51 is equal to 16x squared. I'm going to move that 19x squared over by subtracting it from each side. So we have negative 51 is equal to negative 3x squared. We divide each side by negative 3. These all turn positive. 3 goes into 5 once with 2 left over. 3 goes into 21 7 times. So 17 is equal to x squared. We're going to take the square root of both sides, and x is going to equal plus or minus square root of 17. For 39, we have the square root of x squared plus 1 is equal to 1 minus x. So our radical is isolated. We're going to square both sides. Now that we're squaring this binomial, remember, we are multiplying it by itself. So that's 1 minus x times 1 minus x. You're going to have to FOIL with this. So this is going to leave us with x squared plus 1 is equal to 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times negative x is negative x. Negative x times 1 is negative x. If we combine those, it's going to give us a negative 2x. And then negative x times negative x is a positive x squared. So our whole idea here is to get our x squareds together so we can subtract x squared from each side. So these are going to cancel out. We're going to have 1 is equal to 1 minus 2x. I am going to subtract this 1 from each side to give me 1 minus 1, which is 0, is equal to negative 2x. We divide each side by negative 2. And we get 0 is equal to x. So x is 0 in this case. For 40, same thing. We're going to isolate the radical, which it already is, and then we're going to multiply that binomial by itself. So 3 minus x times 3 minus x. This is going to give us x squared plus 9x is equal to 9 minus 6x plus x squared. We get the x squareds together, so we subtract them from each side, and they cancel out. So 9x is equal to 9 minus 6x. We move the 6x over by adding it to both sides. So we are going to be left with 15x is equal to 9. Then we divide each side by 15. And x is equal to 3 over 5. From here, number 41, we have the square root of 3a squared minus 32 is equal to a. So we are going to square both sides since our radical is isolated to give ourselves 3a squared minus 32 is equal to a squared. I want to bring that 3a over, or 3a squared over, so I'm going to subtract it from each side. So I'm going to have negative 32 is equal to negative 2a squared. I'm going to divide each side by negative 2 to get my a squared by itself. So these are going to turn into a positive, and we're going to get 16 is equal to a squared. I take the square root of both sides, and I have that a is equal to plus or minus 4. Now, if you look at this, this is telling us that we have a negative 4 as our answer and a positive 4 as our answer. Can the square root of anything ever give us a negative number? No, it can't, so that negative 4 is not going to be the answer. This is what happens when you have a variable on both sides. You have to pay attention to this. So that 4, that's just the positive 4, is your only answer here. For 42, we have the square root of 13b squared plus 33 is equal to 4b. So again, our our radical is isolated. So we're going to square both sides. Give 13b squared plus 33 is equal to 16b squared. I'm going to move that 13b squared over to the other side. That's going to give me a 3b squared is equal to 33. I'm going to divide each side by 3 and get that b squared is equal to 11. We take the square root of both sides to get b is equal to plus or minus the square root of 11. Again, can we have that negative? No, so it's just the square root of 11. For 43, we have the square root of x squared plus 6x is equal to 4. Now, this one doesn't have a variable on the other side of your equal sign, so we're going to do this like we normally would. Square both sides. So x squared plus 6x is equal to 16. We are going to move the 16 over by subtracting it from each side to give us x squared plus 6x minus 16 is equal to 0. We then factor this, and remember it's going to be x minus what? Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, so the factors of negative 16 that add up to be 6, we have 2 and 8. If the 8 is positive and the 2 is negative, that's going to be a positive 6. So this factors out to be x minus 2 times x plus 8 is equal to 0. We set both of these equal to 0, so x minus 2 is equal to 0, and x plus 8 is equal to 0. We solve for x for both of these, so add the 2, we get that x is equal to 2, subtract the 8, we get x is equal to negative 8. If we did this, the negative 8 squared is a positive 64, and the 6 times negative 8 is negative 48. The 64 minus 48 is going to give us 16, and that's a positive 4, which that works. So both of these are our solutions here. Again, you got to be careful when there is a variable on the other side of that equal sign, and you're taking the square root of, or you're squaring both sides. So with 44, again, we're going to square both sides here. So a squared plus 3a is equal to 4. We can move that 4 over by subtracting it. So we have a squared plus 3a minus 4 is equal to 0. The factors of that 4 that add up to be, that add up to be 3 are a negative 1 and a positive 4. So this factors out to be a minus 1 times a plus 4 is equal to 0. So a minus 1 is equal to 0. A plus 4 is equal to 0. We are going to add the 1 to both sides to get a is equal to 1, and subtract the 4 from each side to get a is equal to negative 4. So both of these, again, are our solutions. For 45, we have the square root of 15x squared minus 12x is equal to 9x. Our radical is isolated, so we are going to square both sides here. So we're going to have 15x squared minus 12x is equal to 81x squared. We are going to move the 15x squared over. So we are going to be left with negative 12x is equal to the 51 minus 15. The 1 turns into an 11. The 8 turns into a 7. So that's 66x squared. From here, we can go ahead and move the 12x over, because we're going to factor this a little differently. So we're going to add this, and the only reason why I'm doing this is to make sure that my a, so the number in front of that x squared, is positive. So from here, we are going to factor. What's our greatest common factor between both of these? Well, we know 6 goes into both, so does the x. So this is going to leave us 6x times 11x plus 2 is equal to 0. So 6x is equal to 0, and 11x plus 2 is equal to 0. From here, divide each side by 6, x is equal to 0. Subtract each side by 2, 11x is equal to negative 2. And then divide by 11 to get x is equal to negative 2 over 11. Now this one, because there's that negative, is not going to work for our answer. For our next one, we have 46, which is the square root of 20y squared minus 13y is equal to 5y. Radical is isolated, square both sides. So 20y squared minus 13y is equal to 25y squared. I'm going to move everything over to the right side, just that way my a is positive here. So I'm going to subtract 20y squared from each side to give us negative 13y is equal to 5y squared. And then I'm going to add the 13y to both sides. They're not like terms, so 5y squared plus 13y is equal to 0. I'm going to factor out a y here, so this is going to be y times 5y plus 13 is equal to 0. I'm going to set both of these equal to 0, so y is equal to 0, and 5y plus 13 is equal to 0. The y is equal to 0 is a solution. The 5y plus 13, I'm going to subtract the 13 from each side, so 5y is equal to negative 13, and then divide by the 5 to get y is equal to negative 13 over 5. Again, because there's that negative, this cannot work since there is a variable on the right side of that equal sign when we start. For 47, we have the square root of x plus 6 is equal to the square root of 16x. So for this one, we are going to actually start by subtracting the square root of x from each side. This is going to make it the easiest for us. So we're going to have 6 is equal to the square root of 16x minus the square root of x. From here, we are going to square both sides. So 36 is equal to the square root of 16x minus the square root of x times the square root of 16x minus the square root of x. So we're going to FOIL this. That 36 is going to stay. The 16x times the 16x underneath the radical just is 16x. And then we are going to have the negative square root 16x squared minus the square root of 16x squared plus the square root of x squared, which is just x. The square root of 16x squared is 4x, so it's going to be 16x minus 4x minus 4x plus x is equal to 36. So we are going to combine like terms here. The negative 4x minus 4x is 8x. 16 minus 8x is 8x. Plus x gives us 9x. So 36 is equal to 9x. We divide each side by the 9, and we get that x is equal to 4. For our last one, same thing. We're going to move that negative 3 square root a over by subtracting it from each side to give us 7 is equal to the square root of 16a minus 3 square root a. We are going to square both sides now. So this is going to give us 49 is equal to the square root of 16a minus 3 square root a times the square root of 16a minus 3 square root a. From here, we multiply, so it's going to be 49 is equal to 16a minus 3 square root 16a squared minus 3 square root 16a squared plus 9 square root a squared. Okay, so if we simplify this, 49 is equal to 16a minus 6 square root 16a squared plus 9 times a. Simplify this even further. 49 is equal to 16a minus 6 times 4a plus 9a. Again, further simplify this. 16a minus 24a plus 9a is equal to 49. All right, combine like terms here. The 16a minus 24a, 16 minus 24 is negative 8a plus 9a is going to give us a is equal to 49.